Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that recently gave coronavirus to George. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Colonial from Stratagem Game Design. In Colonial from Stratagem Game Design, 2 to 6 players are going to take on the roles of various European powers as they attempt to colonize the globe and take various resources to create the greatest empire that they can. The game board is divided into the various regions of the Earth. Now, Europe just has the sequence of events in it, but the other regions around the Earth are divided into smaller subregions, and they also have various resources that can be tapped and native powers that must be overcome. Now, each player is going to receive a number of discs which will act as both currency and goods and merchant fleets and naval fleets during the game. They'll serve a lot of purposes. You'll also get a player aid which will have kind of your treasury, which is where most of your discs will be, but it will also have a space for your merchants and as well as for your naval power during the game, and where you place your discs will determine exactly what they represent. You'll also, around the board, have several different tracks, a naval track, an economy track, a few others, and these things will kind of dictate kind of where you are on those specific areas that will give you certain advantages as the game progresses. Now, each player will also have a deck of 6 cards. Each card is divided into 2 spaces. They have 2 different characters on them. Now, what you're going to do is, the very first round, you have the Endeavor phase. Every player is going to select 5 of their 6 cards and place them face down in order, 1 through 5, and that order matters. Then they're going to reveal their first card and take turns resolving it. And they can pick the top or the bottom. Then they're going to do the second card, then the third, all the way through all 5 cards. Now, these cards do different things. For instance, the Ambassador allows you to move back on the diplomacy track, which is important because if the other players are in front of you on the diplomacy track, essentially they can't attack you. You need to be in the same space or further along on the track in order to be attacked. So this is a way to protect yourself from other people declaring war on you. You can play the Conqueror card. Essentially, if you have as many discs as there are native power icons on that spot, you can go ahead and place a colony there. Now, for the Explorer, you're attempting to explore the different regions of the world. The different spaces have different numbers on them. Now, you're going to roll 10 die, and you're trying to roll for successes. So you roll the 10 die, and if you've got at least that number of successes there, and there are a few mitigating factors as well, you can go ahead and you have claimed that. You can place a disc there, and you begin the process of kind of exploiting that area. Now, you also have a financier. Now, at times you may run out of tokens, may run out of discs, and you need more. You can go to the financier to essentially take out a loan, but you're going to be accruing interest on that loan, so you got to be very careful if you decide to take out a loan. Now, if you play the Governor, you can try to create a booming city. There can only be one booming city on the map at a time, but a booming city will also give you various advantages. Now, you can also use the Merchant. Now, each of the regions around the board, they have certain commodities. If you play the Merchant, you can go ahead and essentially put discs from your pool into the kind of the goods pool, and if for whatever reason you can't transport enough, you got more ships than you have goods, you can transport other people's as well. That will allow them to instantly take a disc, and if you play the Trader, you will actually be able to then collect all those discs from the goods section, and then you've got more discs on the board. Now, sometimes you'll get unrest markers. For instance, if you play the Rebel card, you can put unrest markers around the board. But if you play the Missionary card, you can flip those over, and it kind of mitigates, it kind of destroys the unrest as you create missions there and use kind of religion to suppress rebellion. There's also the Scientist card. Scientist allows you to move forward on any of those tracks around the board. There's the Sovereign, and the Sovereign allows you to go to war. Essentially, you fight various naval wars. You will fight, if you're in the same region, you can fight to take control of that region from another player. But then also you launch a naval war. Essentially, you compare naval power. You both roll die. You're trying to roll successes. If you destroy your enemy, then you start taking out their merchant fleet as well. Finally, there's the Viceroy. He lets you place more of your counters on your the various territories around the Earth with the same number of logistics you have on the logistics track. Now, once you've completed all the endeavor phase, you go around, you do all the endeavors, then you can go ahead and transfer money from, or you can transfer your treasury rather, to your merchant fleet. You can, depending on how many monopolies you have, you can go ahead and transfer them from your treasury to your merchant fleet to kind of expand your trading base. Now that's key because if you have a monopoly, you're the only person that controls that resource, and that's going to unlock certain keys for you in the game. Now, you also pass the first player token. Normally, that's just the person to your left, but if ever there's somebody with the fewest number of monopolies, then they go ahead and they get the first player token. You can also go ahead at this point and transfer some of your discs from your treasury to your naval power, and again, that's dependent upon how far you are on the naval power chart. At this point, you also have to pay interest on your loans. So you look at where you've taken out the loans, and you have to add one disc there. Essentially, you're going to have to pay that off because you can't win the game if you have outstanding loans. Now, throughout this all, you're gaining victory tokens. Now, when you explore certain areas, you gain victory tokens. Some places, like Australia or North America, can give you 2. You can try to circumnavigate the globe. That'll give you 1. And there's different ways you're going to gain these victory tokens. Now, the first player who gets 10 victory tokens wins the game. However, if, as I say, you have outstanding debt, you can't win. So it comes down to the first person who can make it to 10 victory tokens and has no outstanding debt wins Colonial. Okay, so that is a bare bones overview. There's a lot more going on with Colonial than what I just said. This is a very, very, I don't want to say it's a complex game, but there are a lot of rules here. And, you know, first game, there was things we were playing wrong. We subsequently learned, but like for instance, you can't just take over India on the first game turn. You got to eventually get up to take over India. So there's a lot of rules here. The rule book is not as well laid out as I'd like it to be, and you know, it's talking about those cards, and it would have been nice if there was just like a little line of dialogue saying, this is why you want to play this card, this is what it does. But you know, it wasn't as clear as I was hoping it would be. Not the worst rule book I've ever read by far, but I would have liked it a little more streamlined. And this is a second edition, I believe, which is already streamlined from the first edition. But there's a lot of stuff going on here. But still, this game, once you get into the hang of it, once you get past the learning curve, because there is a learning curve, it's pretty fun and it's pretty engaging. And there's a lot of competition as you're going for those regions where you're going to score high points, where you're trying to build colonies, where you're trying to build up a booming city. And then when you fight those wars, it's pretty intense as well. This is a pretty solid exploration game I like, but there's a few things I want to talk about here. When you look on the map here, one of the commodities, of course, is chains representing slavery. So this is a game that, of course, acknowledges the realities of slavery, and it does it in a very abstract way. And I kind of feel like with a game like this, it's a very damned if you do and damned if you don't, right? If you don't bring it up, you're ignoring this, and if you do bring it up, then you risk being kind of insensitive to it, I guess is the way to say it. So bear that in mind. Know that this is represented here. I don't know a way you can get around trying to be both representative of the history and trying to be overly sensitive without abstracting it, right? I don't really know how to do that effectively. And I think this game does it all right. I mean, I guess you look at Freedom of the Underground Railroad from Academy Games, which handles the subject very well, but that's a whole game about that subject. And here, this is a very peripheral concern to the game at large. But that is there. Just be aware of it going into it. If that is something that perhaps is not going to appeal to you, it is here. But the game itself is pretty solid. It's a pretty good game. If you can get past the learning curve, I think generally you will enjoy Colonial. I'm going to go ahead, because there is such a learning curve and because there are some of these other issues, I'm going to say try it before you buy it. It's a pretty positive try it before you buy it. I think if you do like these kinds of world exploration games, it's kind of a little Euro-y. But there's still kind of enough meat here in direct conflict and dice rolling that it will appeal to kind of the America-Trash set. I think you'll enjoy Colonial. A recommendation, try it before you buy it, but it's a positive one. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's some more hilarious footage of George with the coronavirus. Enjoy.
Who gave this to me? Ugh.
Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Yeah!